Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into an incredibly special explainer. We're going to explore the deeply personal, inspiring, and frankly, astounding life of a man named Billy Joe Ivey. Now, this isn't just your standard biography. No, it's a real masterclass in resilience. It's the story of how a life forged in the absolute harshest of crucibles can be completely transformed into a lifetime of unwavering service. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's dive into this fascinating journey of faith, family, and community.
You know, in his later years, Joe actually reflected on his life with this heavy, raw truth. He said, "I didn't have no childhood. I knew I was grown because I was on my own." And wow, that really sets the stage for everything we are about to uncover here. We're talking about a guy whose early years weren't filled with innocence or playdates. They were defined by an extreme, grinding hardship that, honestly, most of us today can barely even comprehend.
So it begs a pretty huge question, right? How exactly does a boy who essentially missed out on being a kid grow up to become the bedrock, the ultimate father figure, protector, and mentor for an entire community? It's a remarkable narrative arc. And as we go through this explainer, we're going to see exactly how his early trials didn't break him, but instead, they completely forged him.
Section 1. Humble and Hard Beginnings.
Okay, to really understand the man, we have to travel all the way back to 1930s Arkansas. Born in 1936 to a sharecropper family in an area known as the Louisville Bottoms in Jacksonville, this was a place that was so prone to flooding that the only way for the kids to get out and go to school was sometimes by boat. It was a gritty, absolutely unforgiving reality, literally anchored in the mud, where they worked the fields from sunup to sundown just to survive. And the staggering scale of the hardship he faced? It's almost hard to fathom. Try to picture this. Joe was one of 18 siblings. 18! They all lived in this raw wood shotgun house that didn't even have glass in the windows. In the dead of winter, the kids would pile into just 3 beds just to share body heat. But honestly, the grimmest detail of his youth is the heavy responsibility he had to shoulder. By age 11, without any modern tractors or anything, he was forced to hand-dig graves for his own family members. He'd stand on the floating caskets in the flooded, muddy ground just to get the dirt over them. Just unthinkable for an 11-year-old.
Now, what's really wild about this period of his life is the extreme contrast. On one hand, you look at the total lack of basics. No electricity until he was 13, no indoor plumbing, stuffing his worn-out shoes with cardboard boxes to survive the freezing winter. Yet, on the flip side, enduring joy. He and his friends would pack a sock full of cotton to use as a softball, and they'd grab a heavy axe handle for a bat. Despite literally everything stacked against him, his spirit remained completely unbreakable. He found pure joy in the absolute bare minimum.
Section 2. The Call to Duty.
So, eventually, the grinding hardship at home, which was compounded by a pretty harsh father, just became too much. At just 16 years old, Joe takes off. He works construction, travels across the country, and finally finds a brand new path in the military. In October of 1954, he enlists in the United States Navy as a gunner's mate aboard the USS Rice, taking command of a 5-inch .38 machine gun and diving headfirst into global conflicts. And his service? It threw him into some incredibly intense environments. In '55, he was doing shore bombardment during the Korean War, where it was so insanely cold that ice would actually freeze to his eyebrows inside the gun mount. Then, talk about an extreme pivot. In 1956, he was sent to the scorching Marshall Islands for Operation Red Wing, a series of nuclear atomic tests. And if that wasn't enough whiplash, later that very same year, they sent him out to the -20-degree freezing waters of Kodiak, Alaska.
But look, that kind of service always comes with a massive cost. The unseen scars from his time in the Navy were severe. Sitting in that booming gun mount during the Korean War, it cost him the vast majority of his hearing. And during those atomic tests in the Marshall Islands, the heat was so unbelievably intense that the sailors were issued Bermuda shorts and t-shirts. Joe stood offshore for 90 days, watching atomic explosions while nuclear dust and ash rained down on his bare skin. Tragically, that led to a lifetime of aggressive skin cancers and painful surgeries.
Section 3. Into the Fire.
Now, returning home from the military, Joe absolutely could have just retreated, right? He had every right to focus solely on himself after surviving poverty and war. But instead, he ran literally back into the fire to become a lifelong protector of his community. For 23 years, starting in 1971, he dedicated his life to the Jacksonville Fire Department as a firefighter, an engineer, and an EMT. He was on the front lines of countless 911 emergencies. His steady, experienced hands often meant the literal difference between life and death for the citizens of his town. And Joe survived some terrifying near-death experiences himself, like the time his long hair got tangled up in his breathing apparatus while inside a burning building. Yet he never backed down. He continued to mentor the next generation, living by this simple but profound philosophy at the firehouse: bravery is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act in spite of it. The firehouse became his true family. It was a place where he taught younger firefighters that real courage is moving forward, even when you are absolutely terrified.
And hey, if 23 years of running into burning buildings wasn't enough, Joe also dedicated an incredible 60 years of his life as a devoted master mason. I mean, 60 years. This just proves how deeply the man valued brotherhood, charity, and equality. He wasn't just a member showing up to meetings. He was a certified teacher who actively guided generations of men and women to live lives of total integrity.
Which brings us to our final section, an enduring legacy. As we look at his later years, we transition from these huge acts of physical bravery to the quiet, enduring legacy of love he built. It was honestly as if he spent the entire latter half of his life actively constructing the beautiful, massive family and community that he was totally denied in his own childhood. At 85, he was this beloved patriarch of a giant family, 5 children, grandchildren, and get this, 27 great-grandchildren. With his partner Laura right by his side, he loved throwing surprise parties, keeping the Ivey family heritage alive, and just sitting out on the porch, reflecting on a life truly well-lived. Now, I absolutely love this next detail. It's just so touching. Later in life, Joe had to have open-heart surgery, and the tough recovery threw him into a really deep depression. He started feeling like his usefulness was over. To pull him out of it, Laura bought him a little birdhouse with a license plate roof and just casually suggested, "Hey, you could make these." Well, Joe started handcrafting these beautiful birdhouses, giving them away left and right to neighbors, family members, and local fundraisers. They became these small, tangible gifts of his continuous leadership through sheer kindness.
When Joe eventually passed away, his obituary included a uniquely powerful phrase. It said he was an organ donor in spirit. Let's unpack that for a second. Joe fully, 100% intended to donate his organs to save others even in death. The only reason he couldn't was because his body had suffered so extensively in those final days. But the Organ Donor Foundation formally honored him anyway. Because that intention, it perfectly captured the essence of a man who gave and gave until he had absolutely nothing left to give. To honor his passing, his brothers and sisters in the Jacksonville Fire Service brought an engine right out to give him his final ride. It was just a profoundly moving tribute, an unbelievable testament to the deep, unshakable respect he earned from the men and women he stood shoulder to shoulder with in the fire for all those years. And bringing our emotional arc to a crescendo today, we see his wife Laura's tender, absolutely heartbreaking goodbye. You know, Joe's life started in a cold, raw wood house with zero comfort, but it ended surrounded by profound warmth and total love. As he began his stairway to heaven, Laura and his family were right there, holding his hands the whole way. Which brings us to a question I really want to leave ringing in your ears today. What kind of legacy are you building in your own community? Billy Joe Ivey showed us that no matter your beginnings, literally, no matter the poverty, the incredible hardship, or the deep scars you carry, you have the power to protect, to mentor, and to love. Think about Joe's life and ask yourself how you can step up and serve those around you today. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you all next time.